Welcome back. We are diving deep today, starting right inside that familiar, sometimes really confusing internal landscape. You know that feeling, right? That
Mm.
invisible push towards a choice that, well, logically you just don't understand. Or maybe it's that sudden cold wave of anxiety that hits you when there's absolutely no real danger around.
Yeah, or the flip side of that coin. That feeling of just absolute unshakable certainty, that gut feeling,
Yeah.
a quiet, almost familiar voice sort of encouraging you, telling you, even without hard evidence,
Yeah.
that you're exactly where you need to be, that you're moving the right way.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this a bit. We've looked at the sources suggesting our minds aren't just empty rooms waiting to be filled. They're actually more like living museums, repositories, really, filled with all the echoes, the triumphs, the traumas of our entire lives.
That's absolutely the core concept here. The subconscious mind is this vast, incredibly deep archive. It holds every single experience, every lesson learned, every wound, every piece of wisdom you've ever gathered along the way. And the things in this archive, these psychological leftovers, you could say, these metaphorical ghosts and imprints, well, they're the invisible architects building our daily lives. They shape our reality, often without us even noticing, certainly without asking permission.
And that really sets up our mission for this deep dive, doesn't it? To give you a kind of practical guide to navigating this inner museum, we really need to get clear on the difference between the hauntings, those negative patterns holding us back, and the heirlooms. Those are the positive gift, the inner resources that actually guide us forward toward growth.
It's basically sorting the baggage from the treasures.
Exactly. And it's crucial to state up front. This isn't about anything supernatural. It's profoundly psychological. Okay, let's start with maybe the tougher exhibits first. The hauntings. These are what we're calling the bad ghosts. So the negative imprints, the emotional residue that sticks around long after the original event, the trauma, the shame, the fear that actually created them. We're really talking about limiting beliefs, aren't we? Beliefs built on old, often outdated information.
Precisely. A haunting could be, say, the echo of a really critical parent, or maybe discouraging boss from your first job. That echo gets internalized over time, and it morphs into your own relentless inner critic. It becomes this ingrained pattern. Behavioral scientists often call this a maladaptive schema. It's a deeply held belief pattern, usually formed early in life, maybe to keep you safe back then, but now it's actively holding you back. It's detrimental.
Oh, I think everyone listening can immediately picture that inner critic. It's often the loudest voice in the room, definitely the most annoying one. Or think about the shadow of a past failure, maybe a project that went wrong, or a relationship that ended badly. That fear whispers, hey, don't even try for that promotion. You remember how this goes, right? It's just going to hurt again.
And you see it surface often as learned defensiveness. Maybe you experienced a betrayal years ago. So now that imprint almost automatically forces you to build these huge preemptive walls in new relationships, even healthy ones. The wall isn't really about the new person standing in front of you. It's aimed at the ghost of that old pain.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating because the source material highlights this kind of paradoxical function. These ghosts, these hauntings, they often pretend to be protection. They masquerade as it.
It's exactly right. The fear ghost isn't intentionally cruel. Its core function is purely preservative. It's trying desperately to keep you from ever feeling that specific type of pain again. And the self-doubt ghost. It tries to shield you from the potential pain of failure by convincing you the risk just isn't worth taking. It basically sees failure as a type of injury to be avoided at all costs.
So wait, you're saying that the self-sabotage we experience, it's actually a kind of misguided attempt at self-care? That's a really tough idea to swallow because the effect of that self-doubt, the outcome, always feels so negative, so limiting.
The intention behind it is protection. The result, unfortunately, is stagnation. These ghosts are essentially running old software. They're using survival maps designed for a dangerous past, maybe a time when you were less resourced, less powerful. And the problem is, they're stuck applying that old, outdated map to new, unfamiliar territories, territories that are often perfectly safe now. This is why you might react with totally unwarranted intensity sometimes, or why you might just freeze up when facing a great new opportunity. They're reacting to a ghost, you see, not the actual reality of the present moment.
Wow, okay. That completely reframes the whole conversation, doesn't it? It shifts the perspective from something is wrong with me to maybe I'm just running outdated software.
Which leads us nicely to the more pleasant side of this inner archive, because the subconscious isn't just a cellar filled with wounds, it's also a treasure chest. It holds the heirlooms, what we're calling the good ghosts. And these positive imprints are just as powerful, potentially even more powerful than the hauntings, even if they often operate more quietly, more subtly.
Right. These are the gifts we carry inside us. They're forged by positive experiences, definitely. But also, and I think this is really key, they're sometimes passed down by your own past self.
Yeah.
Like from times when you overcame something difficult or acted with real integrity.
Yes, an heirloom might be that deep, unwavering belief a mentor or maybe a grandparent had in you. And then years later, completely out of the blue, it surfaces as this sudden, inexplicable feeling of solid worthiness right before you walk into a difficult meeting or negotiation. It's not even a conscious thought. It's more like a felt sense, a grounding.
Or maybe it's the muscle memory of compassion you developed after years of, say, caring for a relative or volunteering. Then when you're faced with a colleague who's clearly stressed out, you find yourself automatically reacting with patience instead of frustration. Like compassion isn't something you have to consciously summon, it's just there. It's automatic, an heirloom you fully integrated.
Absolutely. And these positive imprints, they form the bedrock of our reliable intuition, that guiding gut feeling that often seems to bypass all the logical calculation. It's rooted in what psychologists call implicit memory, often memory of mastery. It's the part of you that whispers, I've handled things like this before. I have the capacity for this. They are the foundation of genuine resilience, those automatic pilots steering us towards connection, towards growth, towards courage.
Okay, so we have these two forces, essentially. The hauntings, that's the old survival code, often glitchy, and the heirlooms, the current positive programming. The really crucial realization here, the one that gives us agency, is that we are not just passive residents living in a haunted house. We are the curators of our own inner museum.
That's the shift. The goal isn't some kind of spiritual warfare against your own past. It's much simpler, though not necessarily easier. It's about turning on the lights, looking around, and consciously deciding which exhibits deserve the spotlight and which ones maybe need to be acknowledged as, historical artifacts, but then moved off the main path.
Okay, but making that transition from feeling like a victim of your past to becoming the curator of your present, that sounds like hard work. Where do we even begin? Because let's be real, when you're deep in that pit of anxiety or self-doubt, just choosing to be happy feels, well, impossible. It's not an option.
And it's not about simple choice. It's about structure. It's about process. That's why we talk about steps. Step one is acknowledge the hauntings. The old rule holds true. You absolutely cannot heal what you refuse to even look at.
But how do you do that? How do you actually stop the automatic reaction and really look at the imprint when it feels so overwhelming?
The moment is key. When that old familiar pang of anxiety hits, or that rush of negative self-talk starts, you have to pause just for a second. Don't just react automatically. Don't try to immediately push it away or suppress it. You need to create what psychologists call cognitive distance. You do that by literally naming it out loud or in your head. Okay, this is my fear of scarcity ghost talking. Or, hello again, inner critic, this is my I'm not good enough imprint showing up.
So naming it creates separation. It separates you, the observer, from the thought or the feeling.
Precisely. You're essentially signaling to your brain, this is data, not directive. You're shifting the processing, ideally, from the reactive emotional centers like the amygdala towards the more rational prefrontal cortex.
Right.
You identify the reaction as incoming information, maybe outdated information, but not as an absolute internal truth about who you are right now. You start to take away the ghost's shadowy power just by forcing it out into the light of your present-day awareness.
Okay, that makes sense. Acknowledge and name. Got it. But once we've named it, once we've sort of seen the ghost in the room, we move to step 2. And honestly, this sounds potentially terrifying. Interrogate the hauntings. You mentioned talking to it. If I'm already dealing with an intense emotion, how can I possibly have a calm conversation with it? Isn't that asking a bit much?
Well, it definitely requires practice, and the timing is crucial here. You acknowledge it in the heat of the moment, yes, but the deeper interrogation, the questioning, that usually happens later, in a calmer, more reflective state. After the immediate emotional wave has crested and started to subside, then you can approach the ghost almost like you'd approach an old piece of source data in an archive, with curiosity.
Right. So when I'm calmer, what are the best questions to ask this whole data?
You need to question its context and, most importantly, its current relevance. Start with, where exactly did you come from? Try to trace it back. When did I first learn to feel this specific way? Look for the origin story, the original event or environment. Then you ask the vital pivot question. Okay, I see you were trying to protect me back then, but is this belief actually true anymore?
Yeah.
And follow up with, does this reaction truly serve my highest self, my current goals in this new situation right now?
Oh, okay. So The imprint might have been a genuinely useful survival mechanism when I was, say, a kid dealing with an unpredictable home environment, but it becomes actively detrimental when I'm an adult trying to negotiate a raise in a supportive workplace. We're essentially separating the history from the present hazard.
That's it, exactly. It's cognitive reframing, but at a really deep level. You almost thank the old mechanism for its service in the past, but then you firmly, consciously retire it. You decide it no longer holds authority over your actions and feelings in the present.
That process, the acknowledging and interrogating, sounds like it could feel like a constant battle, always pushing back against the bad ghosts. So while we're doing that really difficult work, we also need to actively bring in the good stuff, right? That's step 3. Amplify the heirlooms.
Yes, absolutely crucial. You can't just focus on removing the negative code. You have to actively write and reinforce new positive code in its place. Good ghosts, the heirlooms, they thrive on attention. And this isn't just about trying to feel good momentarily. It's about actively strengthening positive neural pathways. It's about building up that implicit memory of your own competence and worth.
Okay, so how do we actively feed these heirlooms, make them stronger?
Well, one powerful way is through active gratitude practice. But not just generic, I'm grateful for the sunshine gratitude, though that's nice too. Focus your gratitude specifically on lessons learned from hard times, on specific moments where you demonstrated resilience, even if it was small. Be grateful for the love and support you've received that helped anchor your sense of worthiness, and revisit positive memories, not just as pleasant nostalgia, but actively recall them as hard, irrefutable evidence of your past capability and strength.
That sounds a bit like keeping a success journal, maybe? But focusing specifically on the internal feeling of confidence or competence that came with the success so you can tap into that feeling later.
Exactly that. And another key part is consciously listening for that quieter, intuitive voice of encouragement, that gentle nudge you feel towards connection or towards trying something brave. When you recognize that voice, the heirloom voice, and you act on it, even in small ways, acting in alignment with your core values, that's when you powerfully reinforce the heirloom's influence. You're effectively making the automatic pilot that steers you towards growth and connection stronger than the old automatic pilot that steers you only towards safety.
Right. So when we put all these pieces back together, the picture that emerges is that the mind is much more like a home, isn't it? Not just a haunted house filled with things to fear. Your subconscious isn't the enemy here. It's simply your history. It holds both the deep wounds and the accumulated wisdom.
Perfectly put. The hauntings, in a way, they tell you precisely where you've been hurt. They pinpoint the areas that require your conscious attention, healing, and repair. And the heirlooms, they constantly remind you of the strength, the resilience, the love you've already gathered along the way. They show you the powerful tools you already possess.
So the ultimate achievement, the goal of all this curation work, is to develop the skill to distinguish between the warnings, those old, often irrelevant survival signals, and the wisdom, the true, intuitive guidance that actually applies to your life now.
Yes. You learn to acknowledge those bad ghosts, maybe even thank them for their well-meaning but ultimately misguided attempts at protection in the past. But then you firmly, kindly ask them to step aside. You choose to embrace the good ghosts, the heirlooms, allowing their strength, their quiet confidence, to truly become your guiding force day to day.
The ghosts of your past, the hauntings, and the heirlooms, they are undeniably part of your story. They form the unique archive of who you are. But you are the one holding the pen in the present moment. The curation is always up to you. The question really becomes, what new story of courage, of growth, of connection, what story will you choose to write next?